Welcome to House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer. Gilbert is joining me as always, but I want to make sure: are we live, Gilbert? Do you think we're good this week?
Yeah, I just thought about that. I was like, "Oh man, is they gonna show up for me?" And yes, all the red lights are on. The red lights tell me that we're on live. Or what is that? Is it Brett Musburger that says you're looking live at so and
Yes,
so?
yes, that was him. So good job by you there. But yes, welcome into a live edition of House of Horns. As we said, Gilbert is from Sports Illustrated, MMQB. He covers the whole league. And yeah, we're here on House of Horns live. We're here to preview this matchup, this divisional matchup between the Rams and the Cardinals. There's a lot to get into, Gilbert. We got injuries, a long laundry list of injuries to kind of go over what the Rams are going to do to patch up some of those guys that are going to be missing now. And then our regular stuff, we got plenty to cover on this game preview. As always, we got player matchups to watch, our latest news and notes, storylines for both teams, keys to the game, and then of course our at the end we finish up with game predictions. But Gilbert, you know, as I talked about, there's a lot of injuries. Let me just go through them real quick before I ask
Hmm.
you. We kind of get into the engagement question. There's like just get right into the injury news. Puka Nacua, Joe Nobum, and Steve Avila are headed to IR. And then from listening to Sean McVay today, he said that it doesn't sound like it's going to be a 4 week minimum for all three of those guys. It sounds like it's going to be a little bit more than that. The way I read it in terms of what he said, it just sounds like he's just being cautiously negative here, so that way he doesn't get fans or people's expectations that they're going to be right. They'll be back for that Raider game right after the bye week. So with that said, Gilbert, and that'll go right into our question here, Gilbert, and then are you, this is for the viewers and listeners, are you more or less optimistic about the injuries this year than you were in 2022? And then Gilbert, you were on the Ram speed in 2022, so how does the injuries that we've seen already compare in week one compared to what you saw covering the team in 2022?
I kind of want to say they're worse this year because than that year because I think it took maybe 5 or 6 weeks before Cooper Cup got hurt, or 7 or 8 weeks before Matthew Stafford got hurt. So for the non-offensive linemen, it took a while before the injuries started piling up. If I'm not mistaken here, as I see one bar on my Wi-Fi, damn you Wi-Fi. Hopefully I'm okay, Victor. Uh, but yeah, and then I don't know. We already talked about this and we already made this joke, but Joe Noteboom is always freaking hurt. He was hurt in 2022 too. Uh, that's why we're a bunch of players that came in. I remember it might have
Yeah,
been
one
week
of those
two.
players, by the way, Gilbert, one of those players that they signed to the practice squad was also someone you actually talked to because he finished out the season at left tackle, and that
Oh,
is Nishki, Ty Nishki. Is that how you say his name?
yeah, I remember his name. That's the same season where Larry Jackson got a lot of opportunity because of the injuries, and Jackson was holding it down. Coleman Shelton was holding it down for injuries. So yeah, I remember. I think it might have been in week two. They were playing the Falcons, and there was just like a bunch of injuries. And this year, it happened in week one. And so I'm trying to keep track. But when you lose Puka Nacua, that definitely hurts. There, you lose Steve Avila. That's gonna hurt because it creates a lot of shuffling. Now you're down to your third string left tackle. But the good news is that Jackson's gonna come back next week. I shouldn't forget about that. So maybe it's not as a dire situation on the offensive line, but we'll find out about Rob Havenstein too for this week. But man, it's just that game last week where they had like 4 or 5 injuries on the offensive line, and now you hear all about the IR situations. But we're gonna get into it. But it's not as easy. Like for most teams, sometimes I kind of have the easy way out. I'm like, oh, you're not gonna have that player. Then you're gonna lose all these games. But the way that the Rams showed heart and fight, you know, on Sunday Night Football, it should not be as simple as who are you going to have this week and who you're not going to have this week. So there are some positives here, but it's not looking good for injuries. The injuries suck, and you want to see Puka Nacua on the field, and it could be 4 games, could be 5. Who the heck knows? But that's the problem too, Victor. We're like they kind of might have rushed Puka Nacua for week 1, and then
Yeah.
he aggravates the injury, and maybe that's what Sean McVay's saying. Like, you know what? I'm not even gonna put a timeline, man. That's how we got in trouble the first time. So, yeah, it's not ideal, but we're gonna also discuss it. But seeing Cooper Cup turn back the clock, you have Matthew Stafford. You have a defense that pretty much balled out with the way they perform in Detroit. So there are some positivities, but just those 3 players. I don't even count Noteboom. Noteboom, stay healthy, man. Come on. That's you find yourself out of the league very quickly when you're not available after a while. But Avila and Puka Nacua definitely hurts.
Yeah, I just wanted to you get your perspective because you were part of that season and it was a long season. It was your only year on the beat, but that I'm sure that was a pretty blue like gloomy locker room every week as the injuries kept piling up. But I think for this question, and I'll answer it this way, Gilbert. I think I would be more optimistic even listening to you just because this is a way younger team back then in 2022. It was a much older roster, so a lot of the injuries you didn't have a lot of depth behind it. It was a top heavy roster. I think this is a more well rounded roster. One of the things, and then the injuries that are happening to 2 positions that we talked about that we thought they had really good depth on. That was the offensive line and then the wide receivers. I think and then we'll get into Puka Nacua and the injury as you talked about in terms of who's gonna need to replace that production. But in terms of the roster and being optimistic about the injuries, I really am just because as we talked about, I think this is like a much younger team, and then we saw that against the Lions. I just when I started seeing all the injuries against the Lions, I just thought, oh man, they're gonna get destroyed in this game. They're down 70-3. This is gonna turn into a rout. And the fight that they showed, it just because they have a lot of young players on this team, I'm more optimistic about them being able to handle the injuries and the fact that it's happening early. And then one more thing, Gilbert, to kind of keep in mind is I know everybody was talked about the bye being early this season and how that was not a good thing. It might have been a blessing now because it allows you to have an extra week to get a lot of those guys it, back. Maybe they're back by that Raider game in week 6. So it might have worked out having that bye early in the year.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the schedule now. So they have the Cardinals this week. They have the 49ers next week. The week after that, the Bears, and then the Packers. So yeah, that's where the bye week comes in. And by the time they come back from the bye week, Puka Nacua and Steve Avila are able to come off IR. So yeah, it could be 4 weeks or 5 weeks, but if it's 5 weeks, then that's okay because there's a bye week, like you mentioned. They get to play the Las Vegas Raiders, and we're going to discuss this week's game, but it seems like a 50-50 battle. So, they could definitely win without those guys. The one that's definitely going to look like a difficult task is the 49ers, and that's
Yeah.
at SoFi Stadium from the home
Yes.
home
Open.
opener there. The Bears look, pretty terrible, so maybe that one's easy, but that's in Chicago, so it could be a little tough. And then you got the Packers where you don't know because you might get Jordan Love or you might not. The Packers are really trying hard to convince people there's a chance Jordan Love could play. So he might not play this week, but doing that and pushing that narrative maybe means Jordan Love could be back in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. So depending on how the schedule breaks, again, it's not as easy as that going win loss situation. But it could have been a worse schedule. The 49ers one kind of sucks. You want to see them at full strength. They look great on Monday Night Football, but it's not, totally, like an uphill battle, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like yeah, that's some great points by you. I just want to get to the comments. We have our guy Manuel Correa joins us. What's up, guys? It's good to hear from Manuel. I think he missed the show last week, and then joined us post game. He post show, I should say. He left some comments on there, so it's good to see him. And then when our strength and conditioning coach left, last couple of years have been hard, so yeah, I mean, it happens when you have a lot of coaching changes, especially strength and conditioning. That's that's always tough. And then he says, I think we can go 4-2, if not 3-3 until the bye would be good. So yeah, it's that bye now looks really good right now in week 5. As you get, try to get your guys back healthy. But Gilbert, moving on in terms of you know, also talking about injuries here with Puka. How we talked about the offensive line, but how do the Rams go about replacing Puka's production while he's out?
Yeah, obviously you're gonna make Cooper Cup the focal point, but then when everybody knows that Cooper Cup is the number one wide receiver, and you have a whole week to prepare for that, like keep in mind the Detroit Lions were game planning for Puka and Cooper Cup, so all these motions, yeah, they were difficult to keep track of, but the Cardinals are gonna be ready for that for a whole game plan, knowing that Puka won't be there. So you got to have Tyler Johnson keep doing what he did in Detroit. Maybe you get Jordan Whittington more involved in the game plan because you could tell he wasn't a part of the game plan when Tyler Johnson came in and Demarcus Robinson was obviously getting his production too. But when you could maybe scheme it up for him a little bit, maybe he contributes. One thing that I know that you saw in the comments on our show for the post game show, where the heck is Tutu Atwell? That kind of tells me they have no interest in giving him an opportunity when it was
Yeah,
Tyler Johnson, Jordan Whittington. So yeah, that's why I always thought like, why are you giving this guy a roster spot? I've been done on the Tutu Atwell experiment. I'm definitely not seeing anything from him. So yeah, maybe they figure it out, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna expect much there. Obviously, you could lean more on the running game with Kyron and maybe get Blake Corum a carry. How about that? You
yeah,
drafted the guy for a reason.
yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes when you have all these injuries on the offensive line, you make life easier when you have better running games. That way, you kind of just focus on one thing and not on pass pro too much. So, that's definitely gonna be something that's big there. But we saw in Detroit and always in Matthew Stafford's career, or even Sean McVay led teams, that you don't need to have a lot of star power to get production from the offense because the quarterback is very good, and then the play calls and the schemes and the game plan are usually very productive.
Yeah, and Manuel Correa says Jordantown. So yeah, he's with you in terms of Jordan Whittington. I think he's somebody to kind of keep an eye on. But I know we talked about, we wrote on the comments there when we were asked about Tutu Atwell, but one of the things I really forgot about, kind of going back, as you remember last season at the beginning of the year, Cooper Kupp was the one that was hurt. He was on IR for the first 4 games of the season, and Tutu Atwell has had his best games when Cooper Kupp. I think if you give him, he's going to have a bigger role now going forward with Puka out. But we'd like to see him take that next step. You shouldn't be, having to be forgotten once those guys are back. He should be part of the rotation. But hopefully now that Puka is out, he can contribute kind of like he did those first couple of games against the Seahawks. I think he went for over 100 yards against the Seahawks in game 1. So you like to see that production go up now with him, with Puka being out.
Yeah, I totally forgot about Cooper Cup being out the first month of last season. So yeah, injuries have been an issue the last 3 years there, but yeah, it also depends on matchups. Like, the Cardinals don't have the Lions defense, so that's a good sign there. And we
Hmm.
all know about Sean McVay having a very impressive record against the Arizona Cardinals. So, uh, you know, th- I am a little higher on the Cardinals this year, but they're gonna be on the road, facing a good offense. It could be maybe like a sneaky kind of fun shootout here, but and that's the thing, like I'm calling it a shootout, knowing that Puka Nacua is not going to be there because I do have that much trust in Stafford, being a gamer and Cooper Cup, especially what he did last week, making the most of his opportunity. So, yeah, these motions and pre-snap shifting it could definitely cause a headache for even the best defenses. And when Jonathan Gannon's defense still hasn't shown too much signs of improvement, that could be a long day there when you're dealing with all that because yeah, it's hard to keep tabs on all these motions.
Yeah, and I mean, he what did he get? 21 targets. Cooper Cup. You can win games like that. You need to be well
Yeah.
balanced, and he almost broke the record for most catches. I think in a game. I mean, his personal record. I think he was like one shy. I think or something. But yeah, you can't have him having that many targets. But before we move to Rams news and notes. I just want to get to some comment. We got a comment, Gilbert. We got a question actually in our video, so I wanted to share that with you, so that way we can give him an answer. But Manuel Correa says, "I didn't watch the game. How did Fist look?"
Yeah, I think he was moving the pocket. Obviously, you want to see more of an impact. You want to see those tackles for loss. You want to see maybe a sack. You want to see him, kind of, you know, you know, get some pressure on Jared Goff. But like I mentioned, it was kind of a safe game plan, a lot of zone defense. Okay, just don't send a lot of pressure. But I think it's a good sign that you see that front pushing it, and especially early on, I was very impressed with Kobe Turner moving it. I'm sure Fisk was helping out with that too. So Jerry Verse got that sack at the end of the first half, but again, that's one thing that I was surprised of. There wasn't a little more action for the defense up front, but again, when you're facing Amon Ross St. Brown and Sam Laporta, who kill you in the middle of the field, zone defense wasn't the bad approach there. So maybe they could get after a little more, but also too when you're facing Kyler Murray, who's known for making you pay if you don't get after it in a hurry. Maybe also too they want to drop back some guys and make sure that uh, he doesn't get around the pocket and go around and get 20 yards on you. But that's not fit. That's not Braden Fisk's job to go back and kind of cover. He's there to push the pocket, and he does that well.
Yeah, especially against a really good offensive line. I thought he played pretty well. He showed some flashes there, here and there, especially for a debut. I mean, rookies around the league didn't do well in their first game. So, I mean,
Actually, yeah.
Fisk, yeah, like Fisk and Burst actually, Burst had a sack, and Fisk, he was good against the run there until the overtime period when he was gassed. I mean, I don't blame the guy. I mean, and we saw it all around the league in that first week was not having preseason games and not playing your starters. We saw this was essentially week one was a preseason, week one because it was pretty bad all around the league in terms of, the play that we saw in week one. Let me continue on with these. We'll get through these real quick. It says, "Hola, señores, go Rams." This is from Delbert Salgado. Says, "Traveling mass unit travels to Gilberto's Cards." By the way, Gilbert, I also picked the Cardinals to make the playoffs. So yeah, like you gave them a shout out. You were on them before I was. So
I
yeah,
I
we'll
think
we'll get
we're
in.
I think we're hanging out too much, Victor, because you convinced me to take the Raiders for my playoffs in the AFC, and I convinced you to
Yes,
take the Cardinals in the NFC.
yes.
So if we screw those up, we could blame each other.
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. We each would either take credit or say, "Hey, you know what? I'll blame you." So there we go. Michael Armenta is joining us. Says, "What up, compas? What up, Michael? It's good to have you as always." And then he said, "Manolo has a point about strength and conditioning." And then my boy Super Cup is back in form, like I said he would. He did. He said, like, when during the offseason, we all talked about it. Hey, should they cut ties with Cooper Cup? And good thing they have him because he looks like
Hey,
vintage
well,
Cooper
he's
Cup.
now underpaid because these wide
Yes,
receiver contracts shot up.
yeah. Last thing here is somebody, Shelby Mitchell, 9024 says, "Hey, I thought Cardi would be handling kickoffs, but Evans did so. Any particular reason for the change?"
I'm not even sure, but that's a good observation, and yeah, it's not maybe he's a better tackler. That's the only thing I could think of there.
Yeah, no, it's because he has the bigger leg, is what I responded to him. And also, we saw that Sean McVay, he did not want to deal with special teams. He doesn't want this to be the reason the Rams lose.
Yeah,
So he's just having Evans kick it out of the end zone,
that's true.
take and have the team take it at the 30-yard line. This is the reason
He
why.
hates it.
Uh, yeah, he hates it with a passion. And then Shelby even asked, he's like, "Well, I heard that from Jordan Rodriguez that they might be switching between Evans one week and then Cardi the next week. I guess we'll find out on this week if they're doing that. But I just think from everything I've heard from Sean McVay is that he really hates this. So he's just gonna have Evans kick it out of the end zone and just start let the Cardinals and
N-
every other team going
that might not
forward.
be a bad idea because the Bills kicked it to DJ Dallas and he took it back for a kickoff, dynamic kickoff return touchdown, the first
There
one
you
ever.
go.
They keep calling it dynamic kickoff, and Yeah, it was very quiet, but they got the first kickoff return touchdown with the new rules. So maybe Sean McVay takes a note. Yes, keep picking it in the back of the end zone, punter.
Yep, there you go. All right, let's get to news and notes. As we talked about, Puka Nacua, Joe Noble, and Steve Avila are headed to IR. Then I'm going to go through a long list of injury injuries here, Gilbert. Kobe Durant has a toe injury. Kevin Dotson left the locker room in a walking boot. He suffered a sprained ankle. Then the Rams signed offensive tackle Jerron Christian Sr., who was cut by the Titans this off during the preseason, and they signed center Dylan McMahon from the Eagles practice squad, and then they signed old friend Akilo Witherspoon to the practice squad along with offensive lineman Ty Nitschke, who you're very familiar with. He was with the team in 2022 when you covered the team, and he finished out the season starting at, I believe, either left tackle or right tackle to end the 2022 season. And so both are signed to the practice squad with the veteran designation. In terms of the injury report, the one we got today, Rob Havenstein was limited in practice today with the foot injury. Linebacker Christian Roseboom, limited participant with the hip. Kobe Duran with that toe. Kevin Dotson with the foot, and tight end Dennis Allen with the back did not practice. Sean McVay said that they scheduled this off day for Kevin Dotson, but they expect him to play on Sunday. So we don't know about Kobe Durant and then Davis Allen ending up on the injury list in terms of whether they're going to play Gilbert. So I think we would agree that the two big ones here are Rob Havenstein. Hopefully he's back this week and he can play right tackle. That'll help a lot with the offensive line. And then, of course, Christian Roseboom, special teams guy, and one of your starting linebackers.
Yeah, that's a whole lot right there on both sides of the football. So yeah, that's why we asked the question: is it similar to 2022? But injuries happen in the NFL. But yeah, that's a whole
Yeah.
lot. Hopefully, you got a little breather there, Vic.
Yeah, yeah. And now we go to the Cardinals. Right tackle Jonah Williams goes on season-ending IR. Uh, Cornerback Max Felton he has a concussion. He did not practice. Kyler Murray popped up on the injury report with a knee, but he was a full participant. And Xavier Weaver, the receiver there, has it oblique and is limited in practice. So before we move on now to Rams and Cardinals storylines, we have a Charger fan with on the comments here, and it's Angel Salcedo. He says, "What
Hey,
up, my guys? How are you? I missed the four of you yesterday. You
well,
missed a great show.
hopefully you checked out
Yeah,
the replay, Angel. It was a good show, like
yeah,
Victor is saying.
yeah, we had Dan and Dago back. It was we had a lot of fun on there. It was just recapping week one, but it's awesome that you jumped on here. We really appreciate you checking out this show, even though it's not Rams. We can give you some pointers here in terms of some fantasy and maybe some betting advice if you're into that. So awesome to have you along. All right, Gilbert, let's talk about your Cardinals and Rams here, as Delver said. Let's get to some Rams storylines, and let's start in terms of, as Delver said, your Cardinals or not. We talked about how much when we kind of before the season, one of the things we like to do is kind of give people teams that we think can make the playoffs that not a lot of teams expect. As you said, you had the Cardinals, I had the Raiders, and then we ended up both deciding that, hey, I think both of those teams can make the leap to a playoff team. But what was it about them that made you take that leap that they can be a playoff team this season?
Yeah, the way they added pieces offensively, and I just like what the coaching staff showed me last season. Yeah, it was a lost season, but they had nice upsets against the Cowboys, Eagles, Steelers. They beat the Falcons. So when everybody counted them out to be like maybe winless or one victory, and I'm not saying 4 or 5 victories is a lot, but they did show a lot of heart. They were competitive, so that was a good sign of changing the culture in Arizona. I'm still trying to see a little more from Jonathan Gannon, especially defensively. it's tough when you don't have a lot of talent on the defensive side, but you can make it work with some productive game plans to at least have the bend but don't break approach. And you haven't seen too much. They did contain Josh Allen for a little bit before he took over that game, and he's that great. So I shouldn't penalize him too much. But offensively, I like a lot. You got Kyler Murray healthy, and when Kyler Murray came back from his injury, the numbers, improved for Drew Petzing, the OC there, and I thought Drew did a great job with the crappy situation he had before Kyler came back. Again, he beat the Cowboys in week 2 of last year when nobody expected them to do that. So, you know, they have who do they have? It sucks that they lost Jonah Williams, the right tackle. They added him this offseason. Obviously, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver there. You got James Conner in the backfield. So I was not surprised that they had a nice little shootout with the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, and that's why I picked them to cover plus 6.5. I barely got that one at the end. They almost stole the game too because they were up 17-3. Uh, but that shows a lot because you're a young team that went all the way to Buffalo. We know about the West Coast team at 10 a.m. and you're
Yep.
facing Josh Allen. So to do that and to cover the spread there and go over for me too, that was pretty good. I picked the over there. So yeah, they are still pesky, but I'm expecting more than be pesky. I'm expecting them to win games this year. So it's only week 2. We'll see if they do it. But this will be my last point. I can maybe answer Angel's question right here. He says, I have Marvin Harrison on fantasy. How do you guys think he will do? Well, the offense was better because the Bills were preparing for him a lot, but he can't be a damn decoy the whole time. Like, he can't have one catch for 4 yards. He actually has to make an impact. Yeah, being a decoy helps out the other wide receivers like Michael Wilson, the tight end who was a good tight end, Trey McBride. It helps out James Conner in the running game. It helps out Kyler Murray, which I think he had a kind of a weird quote today. Weird quote saying it's not my job to give Marvin the ball. You're the quarterback. What are you talking about? Yes,
Yeah.
Petzing calls the plays and he schemes it up and he designs it for the offense. But sometimes you could just say F the play. I'm going down the field to my guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. You got paid, Kyler Murray. You actually have some sway there. So that was a weird comment. But yeah, you shouldn't worry, Angel, because he was out there a lot. He got a lot of snaps. He got a lot of opportunities. Maybe not a lot of targets. I wanted to see more targets, but to be on the field for 50 out of 54 offensive snaps, like, he's gonna get more opportunities. And unfortunately for the Rams, they let up a lot of yards to Jameson Williams. They don't have the best secondary. We're still going off of last year. When I saw Jameson Williams do that, that gave me hope for Marvin Harrison Jr. So Angel, you probably drafted Marvin in the second round. I say you plug him and F it, see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think part of it too, you forgot, like, to mention Trey McBride, the tight end. This team goes through this team is a running team. James Conner is that's that he's the first option, then it's Trey McBride, and then you bring in a rookie in Marvin Harrison Jr., who's he didn't play much in preseason. I mean, I think he might have gotten 3 plays in preseason, and that was about it. And so, as I talked about earlier, a lot of the rookies didn't do great um, because they didn't get a lot of run during the preseason. But there was a lot to like, as you talked about. Whenever you have a quarterback that was drafted high, who we know has taken this team to the playoffs before. It you can see it, and they have a fourth place schedule, so that's why we also talked about why this team could make that leap to be in a playoff team. It was honestly between this team for me and the Seahawks. I knew the Rams. I had the Rams making the playoffs, but in terms of a team that could be a surprise, it was between the Cardinals and the Seahawks, and I just went with the better quarterback. And we'll get into their defense. There's some guys there too, but you also have Paris Johnson Jr., who they drafted last season in the first round. He's someone who had I don't know how much you put into PFF grades, but he rated above 80, so 80%. So that's a good. You lose Jonah Williams, as we talked about, as your right tackle. That kind of sucks for the season. So that's gonna put some pressure on that offensive line. But we know where they bread what their bread and butter is for this team, and that's running the ball. And like I said, we'll get into that. But kind of moving on here and into what Angel had asked, like you had Marvin Harrison Jr. with one catch on three targets for 4 yards. So, are we expecting them to force feed him? Do you think now against the Rams, or do they just like what do you make of the? And you talked about the comments that Kyler Murray made, but I mean, I understand where the fantasy community comes into play here, but as I talked about earlier, I just feel that this team is a run first team, and so whatever you get, he's the third option because Trey McBride had a great rookie season as a tight end. But just wanted to get your thoughts on whether you think the Cardinals are going to force feed Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah,
Against the Rams.
I like that Drew Petzing has a very balanced approach. He gets James Conner involved very heavily, and that leads to opportunities for Kyler Murray to also run some plays. Because as a defense, it's very stressful when you're not okay. When is Kyler going to take off? Like he has a couple of design runs here and there. James Conner's been doing well, so that kind of opens opportunities for Trey McBride, Michael Wilson to do more. But when the defense is also very, very worried about Marvin Harrison Jr., they kind of let Trey and Michael Wilson kind of do their own thing. So you kind of pick your poison. And when it's, a lot of times I hear the coordinator say this all the time, like, well, like it's open to Trey, it's open to Michael Wilson. Like we're gonna go take the the the, the easier outcome instead of taking the big shot. But when you drafted the guy number 4 overall and he's supposed to be the Maserati and this big time playmaker, then you're gonna have to force feed him sometimes. So I could definitely see that happening in week 2, and maybe the Rams take advantage of that. We'll see if Kobe Durant plays, but we saw John Johnson make opportunities with the interception. You still have Quentin Lake, Russ Yeast, Tre'Davious White. For the most part, had a up and down game, but he had his moments too. So you gotta take some shots here because the Rams still haven't shown us that they're capable of keeping the top on the defense because Jameson Williams ripped off a couple of deep ones, and
That's true.
as we know last year the problems with the secondary was the deep balls there. So throw a couple of 50-50 balls to Marvin Harrison's way and let him do damage that way. So that could either be very good or very bad for the Rams because it creates opportunities for takeaways, but also creates opportunities for explosive plays. So that is still a question mark for me for the Rams. Can you defend the downfield portion in the secondary?
Yeah, and that'll be interesting to see who gets the assignment to cover Morrison. And they also have Dortch. He's been good. He scored a touchdown
Yeah.
against the Bills as well. Let's get to these comments before we move on to the Rams side of things with storylines. Michael Armenta says cars are much improved, but Rams will sweep them. Delver wants to know San Francisco and Minnesota. Is it a pick-up game? Last season, we saw Minnesota beat the 49ers,
Oh yeah.
where they just ran all over the 49ers there. So just kind of something to keep an eye on, especially with Brian Flores. I know you're a big Sam Darnold fan.
No, well, for my takes, I need the 49ers to destroy the Vikings. But
Yes.
I think the 49ers are -6, so definitely not a pick 'em game. But I'm not even expecting McCaffrey to play this week, and I don't think that matters. So I think the
Yeah,
49ers will
he's
still
not
be
playing it from what I've heard. He's not playing.
they'll
They're
still
gonna
be heavy favorites based on what they did yesterday or 2 days
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, and when they beat them, they still had Kirk Cousins. I think he got hurt that game or the next game with the Achilles. I forget, but yeah, that was a Monday night game, I believe, that they ended up beating. So,
Yeah.
uh, and then Angel says, I get people hate Kyler, but a comment like that doesn't help his diva status. And then Manuel wants to know, will Omar Speights, I got it right, play if Rosenmoon's out? I would assume so because you're down linebackers at this point. And
Yeah, that
then
was also weird. Yeah, Omar Speights didn't really play much when it was like Rose
yeah, he was
Boom
doing
and
special teams.
yeah.
And
So
then
what?
Angel said,
Yeah, all that hype
yeah,
for that. Come
I
on.
know that usually happens, Gilbert. You know how it is with preseason.
Yeah.
Gilberto, I hope you know if I ever rip you, it's all up, bro. So there
Yeah,
you
no,
go.
I know Angel and like I mentioned on the show yesterday, I think for maybe like 90% of the comments that I get are respectful and fair. Because again, if I get it wrong, give me crap. That's what the show is about. It's the compas hanging out, and when you're hanging out
Yeah,
with the compas, you give each other a hard time. So I'm always laughing. As you could tell, that I know how to dish it too. I give it to Dan Dago pretty heavily too as well. So all love. give me
Yes.
crap, but I hope you understand that I'm not gonna give you like the rainbows and sunshines when it comes to the teams that you root for.
Yeah, and we try to keep it fair for both teams here when we're doing this. I mean, it is a Rams show. We'll heavily talk about the Rams. We'll give you our perspective, but even on Compas on the Beat, our regular show, that was my biggest thing when I talked about it yesterday was like, just don't make it personal in the comments with some, we're more than happy to answer everybody's question and we have fun. Like that's the biggest thing. Like on this show, it's just previewing the matchup, kind of giving you guys an outlook. I like to get, and we'll talk about this with Gilbert going forward, but I like to have someone from the other team speed. Maybe we can get that back again, Gilbert, but that's for another day. We'll talk about that. But let's move on now to storylines with the Rams here and how do the Rams go about overcoming the early onslaught of injuries in your opinion?
Uh, well, one, they're very good at just signing undrafted players or are just ready to go. They're good at drafting players in day three of the draft. So when you have depth and you have guys ready to go and you coach them up and you scheme it up very well, that's definitely one way to kind of overcome it. I felt like 2022, it was just so damn much because even Aaron Donald got hurt, and then that guy never gets hurt. I remember that
Yeah.
I think he missed the KC game or he got hurt in KC. Even that game, Sean McVay took a shot to the face from one of his players. It was
Oh
just
yeah,
it
I
was just a
remember that.
terrible day or terrible season. So for the most part, Les Snead and Sean McVay are well prepared for injuries like this. Maybe they're not used to it because like we've had, I think Emmanuel just mentioned earlier in the show that since the changes to the strength and conditioning coaches, it's kind of gone a little south there. So, it's not new territory because it's been happening for 3 years now. So, and we saw last year how they survived. Well, I shouldn't say they did survive, but they kept it afloat when they lost Kyron
Yeah,
Williams.
there
They
you
didn't
go.
win games, but they kept it afloat somehow. And then they kind of just put a lot of pressure and they had their backs behind their wall and they won 6 out of 7. So that's one way to do it too. Maybe
Yeah.
you're gonna screw up and dig a hole, but get out of it. And the Packers are going to go through it too. We're like, okay, it's early season anniversary. Can you like just stay afloat, or are you good enough to get out of that hole that comes from this? So, the positive is happens early in the season. When Kyron Williams went down, yeah, it was the second quarter of the season, so there's still enough football to have a good second half. So, yeah, you don't want season-ending injuries. You don't want injuries to just ruin your season like that. But there's definitely ways around. And it's football. Like I always hate when I kind of like kick myself when I just go basic analysis. Well, that guy's not playing, and this schedule's hard, and then kind of just make my picks that way. I'm like, that's very lazy on my
Yeah.
part. So, one thing we got to learn about football: injuries are going to happen, and the coaches who are well prepared to adjust to that usually tend to survive these hiccups there.
Yeah, and one of the things my point to this, Gilbert, was gonna be, I know a lot of people went through hell during COVID, but one of the bright spots that came out of COVID, Gilbert, was some of the rule changes. Now
Yeah,
you can keep guys on the practice squad for a bit. So now instead of just having a few guys on your practice squad, you can have up to 16 guys on the practice squad, and then be able to elevate some of those guys. And I think that's where this the whole change with the practice squad participants has really helped. And I think that also is a one way to kind of overcome some of the onslaught of injuries as we saw. Like as I said earlier, I mean they went out and they signed two offensive linemen to the active roster. I'm still trying to figure out where they're at in terms of the 53-man roster. If they're at 51, 52, it looks like they're either one or two people short, but it doesn't really matter because we know some of those guys from the practice squad, like Akilo Witherspoon and Ty Nishki, are probably going to get called up this weekend. So that's how you kind of overcome. I thought that was a huge part of what happened during COVID, and I'm glad they decided to keep what they had during COVID because it's not only helped with being able to bring in new players and being able to stay afloat, but it also creates jobs. Like that's part of the thing for a lot of guys. I mean, every year we talk about the amount of players who get cut. to make room for the 53-man roster, and there's thousands of players who lose their job. At least now you can, you see them, you can bring them back, and so that's the cool thing. And as you talked about, the NFL is not for long. There's guys that are gonna get hurt. Last season, we saw a record of 66 quarterbacks who started a game. It had we that's the emphasis on that position, but we forget about all the other positions, and those you got to rotate. You got to have guys ready to go, and so that's been the cool thing was you know making the practice squad list bigger, and I think that's one way for the Rams to kind of overcome a lot of the injuries here early on.
Yeah, no, those are things are you probably you're asking why didn't they do this before? Even like the IR rules, like I think you're able to
Yes,
come back. Maybe it's not this one. You could designate people more than two people to come back from IR twice before. I'm like, why are you doing that? It's a brutal game. Like, why are we limited
yes,
to two or three people to come back from IR and like you can only get on the IR two times? I'm like, that's dumb. So yeah, they kind of ease up on those rules. So overall, I think they're figuring it out. And sometimes we always worry about the NFLPA not doing the best it could to get better things for the players. But that's a victory there that these COVID rules are sticking around.
yeah, and you like to see more of it. You'd like to see more changes coming, but it's a slow process with the NFL sometimes. As long as it keeps improving the game. We've had our criticisms of the international games and all that, but this is one thing where I'm really glad that they kept some of those COVID rules because it helps teams like the Rams when you get all these injuries. Before we move on, Gilbert, to our player matchups to watch. Just want to get some of these comments in. Stevan says he likes my shirt today, so thank you. And then Michael Armenta says Witherspoon is back on the practice squad team, so that's really he's somebody to kind of keep. It says Stevan says Sean McVay's favorite type of players for his offense is thick, slow receivers, thick, short, slow running backs, and small finesse O linemen. That is right
Yeah,
on point.
good point.
Yeah. All right, Gilbert, let's move on to Rams and Cardinals player matchups. I'll let you go ahead and start off, or unless you want me to go first.
You know what? I always forget mine here because did I have? Okay, I see. Yeah, it's kind of an easy one, but especially with all the reshuffling at the linebacker position, it's gonna be very critical. I mean, yeah, maybe we don't get Omar Spates, Spates playing, but Rose Boom and who's the other guy that played a lot? I'm already blanking. That's how
Troy
kind of
Reader.
they got Troy Reader. That's kind of how bad this linebacker group is. But yeah, Jared Goff is not gonna kill you, and I know Jared Goff got that one scramble for a first down, and Chris Collinsworth like was having a whole thing about, oh my god, this guy, you never expect him to run, whatever. But Kyler Murray is gonna do a whole lot of that, and you're
Yes.
really gonna need your linebackers to kind of spy on him and make sure that when they take their chances to go after him, you better get him in open space. If you miss the tackle, he's gonna go off, and he's gonna turn like a 5 yard gain to a 25 yarder. So that's also what you need Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk to push the pocket and create havoc and make sure maybe you could bring them down yourself. But like when that pocket is moving, that's also trouble for Kyler Murray to move around. So you think he's going left, he's going to go right. He's very shifty. So these linebackers better be ready because it must be frustrating for defensive tackles to move the pocket and create chaos, and the guy just slips away and you can't do anything because you look behind you. Ah, crap! The linebackers didn't bring him down. So everybody has to do their part and make a collective effort. So, yeah, Kyler Murray is also good at throwing the football on the run. So, everybody on that defense, like I don't know, Kyler Murray, we could maybe have this discussion, but like he's very talented. He has all the traits. He's not a bust. He's a decent number one pick, but he doesn't strike fear like a Patrick Mahomes does or Aaron Rodgers in his heyday. Obviously, Josh Allen. I don't know if the size thing is an issue, but sometimes he has kind of his questionable decisions. Accuracy kind of gets to him. Warren should give it into Marvin Harrison Jr. So he's kind of a head scratcher sometimes, but like when he's on, he's on. Like that first half against the Buffalo Bills, I thought, great, my sleeper team is gonna do something this year. Like, they look awesome, and then they just went quiet. He was making some dumb mistakes here. Maybe it's also on the play calling too. They got a little too conservative, but when he has good moments, he's really good. So you better be on it, especially this linebacker group that is very thin and not a lot of star power.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it. I know you mentioned the linebackers, but for me, a big importance in terms of the defense is going to be those edge rushers, whereas Jared Burns or Byron Young. You have to set the edge, man, because you got to stay, you can't just go and get out of your lane here rushing because he's going to go around. He likes to go right or left. He likes to get out of the pocket because it creates a better angle for him to be able to throw, into the passing lanes. And so, I think it's going to be very important for those guys not to. We saw Michael Hoyt. He got in. When they threw him out at defensive end, he got exposed. They kept running uh, uh, through him because he couldn't set the edge, and that's part of it. So for me, I think those are the edge rushers are going to be huge in this, as well as the linebackers as you talked about. And for me, Gilbert, I'll move over to the offense, and I want to see what this Rams offensive line looks like. Hopefully, as we talked about, Rob Havenstein is ready to go. So I want to see how they patch up this offensive line. Who ends up playing left tackle? Whether it is Arcuri, AJ Arcuri. So, but I want to see them going up against this front seven of the Cardinals. You can kind of they still have Buda Baker, they still have a Jalen Thompson. In as safety, you got unproven. You I think his name is Bunting is the cornerback there
Yeah.
that they have as well. So you can and I'm expecting big games from Cooper Cup and Kyron Williams. We've seen them torch the Cardinals, but for me, I think if you're gonna have those two guys go off, you need to make sure your offensive line, go does well against their front seven. You got Bilal Nichols there at D tackle, and then you have Mac Wilson Sr., Saban Collins, and Kaiser White. They're their best players on defense along that front seven. So if you can contain those guys, you should have success. And I think they're going to go a long way for you to win this game. So those. I kind of just want to see how this offensive line looks, who starts, how they patch it up, and then how they do against that front seven.
Yeah, the running game is gonna be big. Obviously, we remember Kyron Williams. I think was a comeback game was against the Cardinals, so he went off on them. So, balanced attack without Puka Nacua is gonna be vital there. And yeah, those Cardinals don't have a lot of talent. And I know Xavier Collins is a decent edge rusher. He was a linebacker. They turned him into an edge. He got a little money this offseason, not too much, but he performed well. So, like you mentioned, they got Buda Baker. So not a lot of big names on the front, but the offensive line needs to be ready still.
Yeah, and before we move on to keys to the game, Stevan says, Bowley Marrero has begun. Don't think he'll ever give it back. Someone getting Wally pipped. And we talked about when he got, starter reps during practice. I thought that was huge. We'll see. I mean, the Steve Avila injury looks, it sounds like it's going to be about an 8 to 10 week one. So we never know. I doubt Steve Avila loses his job, but we'll see what happens. I mean, who knows when we see Steve Avila again this season? But it's good to have a Bo Limmer there, that's for sure. I don't know about him getting Wally Pitt, but it's good to have. That's why as I said, I'm not as concerned as I was in 2022 as I am now, just because there's a lot more guys that there to step up, and they're a much younger team. And then we got LG Fella. He says, hello, compa. So it's good to have LG Fella back. Awesome. Thanks for joining us here. And then
Big
let's go
out.
to Big Al. Keys to the game. What do you got, Gilbert?
I kind of discussed it a little bit with Colin Murray and also Marvin Harrison Jr. But the Rams secondary is still on my radar. That's one of the things. Like the defense did a nice job overall, but like to see those passes down the field to Jameson Williams, a guy who I called out, like you don't do anything, Jameson Williams, and sure enough, he did it against the Rams there. So that tells me the secondary is still a work in progress. And don't sleep on Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson's been he has always impressed me, even as a rookie last year. And if you're gonna focus on Marvin Harrison Jr., he could definitely hurt you. And you mentioned Greg Dortch too, a very speedy. So they have guys that could take the top off the defense. And I know Marvin's not known as a speedster, but he's a very physical receiver, big catch radius. So this team could definitely hurt you down the field, and if that's one of your weaknesses, you better fix it. So I want to see how the cornerbacks do. Hopefully, Tre'Davious White bounces back. I know they had some injuries last week too. That led to it, but uh, they did a good job of taking away some of Jared Goff's weapons. But for the most part, y- you could take away Trey McBride, but then you still have three other weapons that could, help hurt you vertically. And with the Lions, they only had one guy that could hurt you vertically, and that's Jameson Williams. So, different team. I'm not saying the Cardinals have better options than the Lions, but when your weaknesses is on the perimeter game and the speed, the Cardinals definitely have a lot of options there. So they need to be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Mine was also on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, with all the injuries to the offensive line, you're gonna need Stafford, you're gonna need Kyron, you're gonna need Kupp, and that defense to carry the load. I think defensively, as we got a comment from Delver here, he says, "Puros cuernos, Shula's big test with the young Bucks, good show, go Canelo." And for
Yeah.
me, I think if you know what you're gonna get from Stafford. You know what you're going to get from Kyron Williams. You know what you're going to get from Cooper Kupp. I think Kobe Parkinson's going to be a guy who is going to be huge in this game, especially with Davis Allen dealing with the back injury. He's a big target there. We've seen in the past that Cardinals struggle with tight ends, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. So that'll be something to kind of keep in mind there. So and I think for me, yeah, the defense needs to step up, and Shula, if he calls a good game, that'll go a long way to for the Rams to win this game. So, yeah, I'm with you. Defensively, they need to step up. Before we move on, Gilbert, to our betting spotlight here, we have a couple comments. Where is Seek? It says reports say that could be a reunion with Robert Woods. What do you guys think of Woods coming back?
Well, I just double checked, and I'm like, did Robert Woods get cut? No, he's still in the Houston Texans, or maybe it's a trade. But again, I don't know. I'm never a big fan of going back to a former player, especially an older one. And yeah, Robert Woods kind of is going to get lost in, or has gotten lost in the shuffle with Houston having so many options: Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins. They got John and Mechie the third. So you know who's a player actually that might be out there that used to be on the Texans that got cut? I was surprised. Maybe he's hurt. I'm not sure. Noah Brown. He
Oh
was a
yeah,
surprise cut. He was very productive for the Texans last year, and maybe the writing was on the wall when they added Stephon Diggs, and there was just too many weapons out there. Uh, or maybe even guy like John Metchie could be one because he's not. He's kind of getting lost too. So I think there was trade rumors about him. So that's maybe a team you could call is Houston because they have a lot of playmakers for CJ Stroud.
yeah, and I mean, I get the whole Robert Woods knows the offense kind of thing, and maybe he can do the dirty work as we talked about for Cooper Cup. That way, it allows him to get a little bit more open. But I'm more of like let the young guys play, man. Like let Jordan Whittington, let's see what you have in Tutu Atwell, and if Puka's gonna miss more time, then you go and you pull the trigger. I mean, the trading deadline got pushed for a reason, and so you still have plenty of time to see what you have and some of these guys before you go and you make a trade. Go out and try to make a trade. Algie fella said, "Good to see Witherspoon back." Yeah, he's a guy that everybody talked about. Perhaps bringing back, and it's good to see him. He says he's still a little uneasy with our O line. So I think if you, like I said, if you have Rob Havenstein back, I think that kind of helps with that. You move Bo Limmer, you have Kevin Dotson there, and then you have Jonah Jackson. He Gilbert. I was reading all the injury report. The only offensive lineman from the projected starters to open the season that was out there was the guy that was hurt. That was Jonah Jackson. He was the only one that practiced today. So everybody else was either limited or was like a bow limmer who was coming in. And yeah, so it's crazy, man. It tells you how things can change so fast.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of injuries too early in the season.
All right, the betting line, Gilbert. Let's move on. Let's finish up strong here. The Rams are 1 point underdogs to the Cardinals. This line opened up at the Rams minus 2.5. It's moved down because of injuries and everything that's happened to now they're the underdogs, and the over under is 49.5. What side of the coin are you looking at here?
Yeah, it's just a tough game to pick. Say they were both healthy. It kind of sucks that the Cardinals lost Jonah Williams, or right tackle. Obviously, the Rams have more injuries, but it's still a very interesting game on both fronts because you do know about the Rams' history. But being a pick 'em here, I don't know how much I could say here, but uh, the Cardinals are at home, and then the Rams have their numbers. So honestly, this might be a game you stay away from when it comes to just picking the team. I know the Rams have the number, but I'm high on the Cardinals, and this is if you're asking me to put money, I'm not picking this game. And then over under on the 49.5, I will go over. I'm only a little hesitant because like does Stafford have enough weapons to kind of, what did they have last week? 10, I mean 20
Yeah,
points to like
20.
kind of keep up, because that, I guess if you're doing the simple math, it would be you need like 24 or 27 kind of game. Uh and you couldn't get 20 last week, but it's not Detroit's defense, it's Arizona's defense. So you know what? After reminding myself that, I will go over here. This one I feel a little better about going over, but the pick 'em, I just don't know which side to go. And you're gonna ask me right now in a bit, but like it just me thinking about it, it's like, yeah, I won't touch this game.
Yeah, neither would I. I think the only thing would be the over under. I'm with you. I'm taking the over in this one. It's just because I just feel like you got week one out of the way where you saw guys who were kind of still in preseason mode, I should say, and now you're ready to go. Now you're going to be in with we've seen how well these two teams play, especially the Rams against the Cardinals, and then as we talked about the Cardinals are going to want to run the ball against the Rams, and I think they're gonna set up some of their play action, and so I think this is going to be one of those games that's in the 20s for both teams, and that gets you to the 50s. So I'm with you there. Before we give our game predictions, guys, give us your game predictions. We'd love to hear. Um, LG fella said flashback to post Super Bowl with all the injuries. I'm guessing. He also said I would like to see wide receiver waiting to get more reps. That'll be someone to kind of hopefully he does with Puka out, and then he's got the Rams by 3 over the Cardinals. So now let's switch over to our game predictions. Gilbert, I'll give you the floor. Who you got in this game?
Well, I'm off to a good start, 1-0. Sorry about that one, Rams fans. I went with the Lions. And yeah, it's a very
Which
difficult
means you
game.
don't have to be here to do the game. You do the show live using my Wi-Fi here because Stevan said if had you been wrong that you should do that. So props to you. You don't have to come all the way to Northridge.
Well, well, the funny thing, as you're saying that, you kind of froze. So now I'm wondering, my Wi-Fi sucks right now. So let's
It might be me.
probably
Who knows? Honestly,
it might have jinxed it there, but yes, I don't have
yeah,
to do that. That's good. But you know what? I hate to do this, but I've been hyping up the Cardinals for this entire off season as being a potential wild card team. If the Cardinals go on to, what the hell do I know? But then I also chose the Rams to go to the playoffs. They go on to, what the hell do I know? So, but 0-2 doesn't really mean much. When you go 0-3, that's when you're really worried. But it's a tough game. I'm just gonna go with the home team here. I don't feel good about it. I know it's like, oh, are you going against the Rams? But I'm gonna go with the Cardinals, and I'll give you some analysis here. Like I won't even care about the injuries. I won't even care about the series where the Rams are dominant. I hate numbers because every game is different, every situation
yeah,
is
that's
different.
true.
But I just see it as this game being a shootout, and that's the one thing I'm comfortable with. It's gonna be a high scoring game, and then I see one team that has more of their weapons, and that's the Cardinals. And when you're like kind of in this back and forth battle, and then like after a while, it's like, well, it's not Puka's not there. Maybe Tyler Johnson needs to step up. DeMarcus Robinson needs to step up. They do have Kyron Williams. Maybe it's more a running game, and maybe it's not a shootout. And that's better for the Rams. Or they have a very punishing smash mouth kind of style. But uh, I'm going with the Cardinals offense being at home. They also really were impressive in Buffalo. That's a difficult place to play in. They blew that lead though. They were 17-3. But they also fought back into that game. That kickoff return touchdown really sparked them. So they have plenty of fight. And going home, I think for me is where I kind of give them the edge here. So I went with a high scoring game. You know what? It'll be. I'm trying to do simple math here. 28-24. Cardinals win this one here.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Gilbert. As much as
Oh,
I want to be
I
the
was surprised.
positive one here, and I'm not the only one. Even Daniel Calderon says, yeah, I think we go 0-2, and
Wow. Okay.
it's a tough thing to do right now. With you're dealing with a bunch of injuries. I know we saw the Rams a couple years ago get Baker Mayfield on a Thursday night and be able to beat the Raiders, but that was at home. You're having to go to Arizona. Like they're hungry right now for a win there as well. It's a divisional opponent. We know that the Rams have had their number lately. They've gone, they've swept them, I think, the last 2 years. And I had everything had they had everybody healthy right now, Gilbert, of course I would have gone with the with the Rams in this game, but it's just hard to pick the Rams right now with all the injuries and everything they're dealing with. If they get this win, props to Sean McVay.
Yeah.
Like, hey, he's making omens work here if they pull out this victory, just because you're talking about having three of your starting linemen out for this game. Alaric Jackson, Steve Avila, and then depending on what happens with it might be Rob Havenstein. So and then you have a injured Kevin Dotson, and so I just think the Cardinals are going to run the ball. They're going to post their
Yeah.
will on, and we saw, as you talked about, what they did to the Cowboys last season. They ran the ball right down their throats. They're going to want to do that. I still have I still have my concerns about Chris Chula, as you talked about. He played it pretty simple against the Lions, and so I just want to see if it and for Ram fans' sake, I hope that we're both wrong. I mean, when we both pick the team either to win or to lose, it usually goes the opposite way. So hey, in a way, maybe that works to the Rams' advantage, and they end up making. So yeah, it's a hard thing, but I have to be honest with a lot of the with this prediction. I can't just be like, yeah, like I could just say, yeah, Sean McVay, they got this. As long as you have Sean McVay, like I said, if they were in full strength and you're telling me Sean McVay is going up against Jonathan Gannon, this would be a easy win for me to pick. But as we talked about, and I'm not the only one. We have Gabriel Gordillo. He says 31-17 Cardinals home opener for an electric offense. Maybe Marvin Harrison gets a little bit more involved. It's too early in the season to be without Puka. So there's that. And then Daniel Calderon says it's our offensive line issue. So there's also that. And then Stevan says, I just want to see Gilberto talking over a frother at Starbucks. So there you go.
I'm not even sure
Yeah,
what a frother is. Like one of those
yeah, it's that thing
whipped
that makes
cream.
it. Yes, yes. It's that little tool that you use to kind of to shake your drink, to make it spin, and then you
Oh,
get
okay. That's what that
yes,
is. Okay, I got
that's
you.
what it is.
I
That's
was
a
like, it sounds
frother.
like one of those like super sugary drinks that I don't know
Yeah.
about. I just get
No.
I get my medium roast and I say, you know what, maybe add a little vanilla in there and I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. I started using a frother over about a year ago. That's why they're hard to. Oh, there you go. Steven says he used to
Oh,
make lattes, so that's
okay.
why he
I'm
knows.
starting to think Steve used to work at a Starbucks, but okay, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I
Yeah,
learn something new
let
every
us
day.
give us some Starbucks to go check out. Maybe we can have Gilbert do the show from there. So there you go, Gilbert. I know it's not what we wanted to see to begin the season, especially being 2 weeks in. The Rams are just littered with injuries right now. But let's hope for the best. Maybe we're wrong and they pull out a win. But we have to be, we have to be honest with the people here. This is why they come and they listen to us, because we're not gonna just give you the homer picks here. But yeah, never. He says never have, but I would totally show up to a House of meet there. So we are thinking about doing a show for House of Horns live this season from SoFi Stadium, depending if it allows us. I think our best bet, Gilbert, is that Minnesota Thursday night game with the Rams might be
Yeah,
our best option,
yeah.
but we'll see, because The one against San Francisco is at San Francisco or at
Mm,
Santa Clara. Sorry.
okay. Yeah, and then we also gotta figure that out soon because I'm guessing parking gets like bought up. Actually, I've never, when you go to a tailgate, I just show up. I'm not the one parking the
Yes.
car and setting up the whole tent. So I gotta know how these things work. Like, do I gotta buy parking
Yeah, we
real quick
gotta.
before
Yes.
it sells out, and I gotta get my spot? Let me know. But I do want to do a
Yeah.
show from SoFi Stadium.
Yeah,
Do that one.
we need to send Fernando since he goes to cover the Chargers games. Like, what do we need to do to set up there, and then what's the best place to go?
Yeah.
Maybe he can get us some information.
I'm
But
just the guy that
well,
brings the beer and I just show up. I'm not the one
right.
setting
And
up the
then I
whole
gotta
tent.
set up the equipment for us, so as a producer. So yeah, let us know where to set up in the SoFi parking lot, and that way we can have a show from there. We'll do a pregame show from there. And Gilbert's gonna be covering. The only time he's gonna go cover a game if it's a national game that week. So whether it's Thursday night, Sunday night, or on Monday Night Football, that's when you will have Gilbert there. So that's what we're trying to plan the show to be able to meet up with some of you guys and have a show from there. So if you guys can give us any tips anywhere we can set up, that'd be great, and we can have the show with you guys. So please give us any information you have. We'll gladly take it. But Gilbert, we've done everything. I said I would try to get you out of here by 7:30. I did not succeed. I went way over. So it's time for us to go. We need to get ready for the rest of the week 2 now, but I think we've covered everything that has to do with this Ram Cardinals game. We talked about all the injuries, everything going on. We both picked the Cardinals in this game. So we've emptied the tank. It's time for us to go.
Yeah, let's get on to week 2. It's a short drive. If you're attending the game, have fun out there. Short drive, short flight to Phoenix. I'll be in Las Vegas this weekend to
Oh, that's right.
cover the Canelo fight on Saturday, and then coming back really early
And you got
on
a quick
Sunday.
turnaround.
Yeah, to watch all the football games. But it should be a good weekend, exciting weekend. I enjoyed all the games in week 1, but this was fun covering or breaking down Cardinals versus Rams, part 1 in 2024. These teams know each other very well. So the first game on the NFC West schedule for the LA Rams. Hopefully, you enjoyed the analysis and be a compa, tell a compa about House of Horns, about Compas on the Beat, everything that we're doing here. But it's time to get going. We appreciate the comments from everybody. But on that note, ya nos vamos, pues, vámonos.